everybody, it's Helen Hillix, your host, and I am here today with Dating Advice Part 2. And I'm happy to be talking about this again because there are so many people who are confused about what to do when they're dating. And they get so much crazy advice, not only from their friends, but sometimes even from people who say they're dating experts. So I want to give you a different perspective than you might have seen before or heard before. And you can take it or leave it. You know, it might suit you very well, and you might say, nope, that one's not for me. But I'm here anyway to offer my view on dating advice. And I did another video and podcast about the only dating advice you'll ever need a couple of weeks ago, so you can look that up. But I want to just, the three main things that I said in that one were that when you are writing your profile and going online and starting to talk to people and set up dates or screen out people or whatever, is that the most important things to me were that you be real. And it's like, don't use a photo of you when you were 30 pounds lighter and 10 years younger. You know, don't use a photo that makes you look completely different than you look now. Don't make yourself sound way better than you actually are. That, you know, I'm a professional woman who's employed, you know, very well employed or whatever, when, you know, you aren't. You know, it's like, be real about who you are and be vulnerable. You know, express what's really important to you. Don't try to say things that you think are going to sound good. Just be real and be vulnerable and get clear about what is really important to you too. Don't get hung up on things like, you know, I could never date a guy with a tattoo, or whatever those arbitrary kind of things are. Let yourself be open to who the universe brings you. And the same thing is, don't settle either. You know, don't settle for people that you know for a fact you're not going to be a match with. So you can go back and listen to much more detail on all of that, but I wanted to just kind of set the stage again and say that once you actually have a date set up with a person, then what do? Well, you continue to follow those rules of be real. But I want to start out with one of the main things that I tell my clients is always see every date as practice. You are practicing relating. And that is the most important thing to remember about dating, is that it's just practice. And I know when I was dating, I had the tendency to see a guy online that I thought was really handsome and seemed to be smart and nice and blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, I would already have married him. We would be getting married. And I've talked to many other people for whom that is the same. That if you see somebody that you think you like, you've already got them married off to you before you even have your first date. So this is how our minds work, you know, is we go off into these fantasy lands. And so it's really important to ground yourself in the reality that, you know what, this is just practice. And even the entire online dating experience might just be practice. You might meet the guy that you are going to end up with, or the woman that you're going to end up with. You might meet them at a friend's house. You know, not even online. I happened to meet my husband online, and I know many other people who did, but you might not. You know, so one of the great benefits, though, of having online dating services is that you get to practice. You get so much feedback about yourself and about the dating process and about who you are when you're anxious and about how you come across and about what kind of guy you actually do like. You might change your mind about who actually you do like by practicing and practicing and practicing, by meeting lots of different people. So if you go into the experience with the idea that you're there to practice, and you're there to practice being authentic, and you're there to practice some of these other tools and skills that I'm going to suggest in a moment, if you look at it that way, then there is never a bad date. There is never a bad experience. It's just more information and more skill building. I just think that is such a relaxing way to look at it too. It's like you're not out there trolling for a partner. You are out there to practice relating and building your relationship skills. And if you're going to do that, why not set your intention to be absolutely honest? You know, you're not really relating if you're not going to be absolutely honest. And again, that means that you do a bunch of different things. But one of them is that you go in there with the intention to be honest. And that it's sort of like you're holding yourself to that standard. You're holding yourself accountable, that you're not going to go in there and strategize to, flatter her to death or to puff up his ego. That's not the intention. The intention is to be absolutely honest. I mean, if you think the person is beautiful, there's nothing wrong with saying that, or that you love their voice or whatever. But the intention is honesty, not flattery or seduction or coercion or manipulation. The intention is to be honest. So another thing that I have noticed that gets so many people in trouble with dating is that they don't say what they see. They don't say what they notice. I heard someone talking about the amount of texting that somebody was doing with them, that, I can't remember how she decided to handle it, but it was something, like the person texted her more than she wanted to be texted. And rather than just saying, I noticed that you text a lot and I'm not sure why, then she tried to handle it in a different way that didn't really say what she saw. Or I have a client who noticed that after they got really close and spent really close time together, that he would disappear and be much more withdrawn for a period of time. But she didn't want to say that because that didn't sound, that sounded needy or critical or whatever it is that we think it's going to sound like. So, somebody else, one person was telling me how lots of people have actually said this, that I had a date with so-and-so and they just talked all about themselves. Well, nobody kept them from saying, I noticed that you're talking a lot about yourself. Are you anxious? Or, is that generally the way your conversations go? Or just to be completely honest about it. And, that's what you're noticing, that they're talking all about themselves and they're not asking anything about you. And sometimes even people have had the courage to say that. And then the person says, oh my gosh, I am anxious. I'm so sorry. Tell me all about yourself. But then they notice that every single time after that, the person is still always talking about themselves. And so they had to keep saying, you're talking all about yourself again. And, you may notice this over time, and you may, then the next piece of that is to notice how you're reacting to what they're doing. Are you triggered by the fact that they talk about themselves all the time? Are you triggered by the fact that they send you so many texts in a day and it makes you feel anxious or irritated or insecure or whatever it is? That's an incredibly important skill as well, is to notice what triggers you about what you're noticing. about them. So let's go back to the texting. The guy is texting constantly, and you say, I notice that you're texting a lot. Are you feeling anxious about connecting with me or something? And you can say, I notice that triggers me, and I'm not sure why. And I think it's because it makes me feel anxious, like I need to reassure you all the time. So how about we talk about that on our next call? That would be so honest, and it would be also honoring what you're seeing, but it would also be accountability for your own reactivity about it and exploring that. Now, not everyone is going to be up for these honest conversations, are they? But if you want to have a healthy, happy relationship, you're only going to have it if you meet somebody that's willing to have those open, honest discussions about what you're seeing early on. If so many people are into strategizing about dating. It's like, don't talk about politics or religion. Well, if you don't talk about any of those potentially controversial topics, what if you find out later that they are the polar opposite of you, and that you could never end up with this person? You are absolutely diametrically opposed to everything they believe in, but you've avoided those topics very nicely, and now you're engaged in a sexual relationship, and you've spent months of your life dedicated to making this work. It doesn't make any sense to me to avoid things that are potentially controversial. It makes much more sense to just say what you feel and who you are and what you believe in, and then say what you notice about the other person, and invite feedback. Invite feedback. How are you experiencing me? What are your observations of me? I remember my daughter's father, we were talking very early on, and, he said, he knew I was an intuitive counselor. He said, well, what do you intuit about me? And I said, you lie and you rage. And he said, that's absolutely true. And, this was decades ago. And I went right straight ahead into that relationship. And what did he do? He lied and he raged. And it's like, but I did say what I noticed, but I didn't then follow up on what does that mean to me? And that kind of goes back to the previous dating video about decide what's important to you. And I had not decided, apparently, at that time, that being accountable and being honest was something that I really valued, that I had to have in a relationship. So be noticing what you notice, and be willing to see whether that is an important thing to you or not. If you notice that the person drinks 4 drinks of alcohol, and you are absolutely freaked out by somebody that might be an alcoholic, it would be important for you to say, I noticed that you had 4 drinks. Is that something that you normally do? And I noticed that it triggers me because my dad was an alcoholic. If you don't bring that up early in the relationship, and then you find out later that absolutely this is how he drinks, and he drinks more and more and more because he was on his best behavior, or she was on her best behavior that night. Or if you see their pupils are dilated or pinpoints or whatever, and you don't mention that because you don't want to offend anybody, it's like you are just avoiding reality, and you are not going to be happy later when you find out that thing that you didn't want to talk about actually becomes a huge issue in your relationship. So be willing to risk being vulnerable. Be willing to risk offending the person. And I don't mean to say it in a mean way, but I mean to say it in a clear way. risk being willing to offend someone to be able to be real and authentic and find out the truth early on. Don't waste your time trying to make something work just because you think the person is cute or they have money or they are friends with your friends, whatever the reason may be. Don't try to make something happen. Observe what is happening, reflect what is happening, receive their feedback about how they're perceiving you, talk about why those things might be upsetting to you and whether they're real or whether the fact that he has an ex that I know triggers me, and maybe there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just triggers me because I had that happen to me some other time, that they cheated with an ex or something. So it's like, own your own part of it, but talk about it. Talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. And don't worry about saying things just right so that they couldn't possibly offend anyone. Be yourself. Say what you see. I know I've said it about 1,000 times now, but I have to keep saying it because it's worthy of repetition. And be willing to risk the relationship with every single date. And, what do I mean by that? I mean that don't go into it saying, I'm going to make this a wonderful evening. I'm going to make everything be just right. No. Let it be another experience. Let it be another day. Let it be another communication. Let it be another observation. Let it be another day of practicing, risking being vulnerable and open. Don't try to make anything happen, because if you do, then it's going to be artificial. You're going to inevitably skip over something you don't want to notice, trying to make it be good. And be who you are. If you don't ever wear makeup, then don't wear makeup. If you are a guy that hates to dress up and likes to wear, shorts and a Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops, then say that from the get-go and say, you know what, I'm really a casual guy. How do you feel about that? And you get to really reflect, is that really that important to me or isn't it? I hope it isn't that important to you because it's really superficial, but it might be something that just triggers you out of your mind and you can't take it. So it's like, be who you really are. And if you're a woman who hates to wear high heels and pencil skirts and, all of that, then don't do it. Don't do it as a way of impressing some guy. And then later on, he finds out you're never going to wear that again. I had a client once who's, I don't know, I guess they were farther along in their relationship, but it's like he wanted her to, get her nipples pierced and stand out on the balcony with naked breasts with nipple piercings because that turned him on. And it's like, if that's not who you are, don't do it. And this is a farther down the line kind of thing, but it's still the same idea. It is, be true to yourself. Don't twist yourself into a pretzel to try to please somebody else, because ultimately, you know what that will lead to? Resentment. Because then you expect him to twist himself into a pretzel to please you, and that's all the relationship becomes is, well, I did this for you, so why aren't you doing this for me? No, it's like, be who you are from the get-go. I remember a couple that I was friends with a long time ago, and she hated sex, but before they were married, they had lots of sex and she pretended to enjoy it. And then they got married and she never wanted to have sex. And it's like he felt completely tricked and betrayed and angry about it. And, the same thing goes for oral sex either way. People say, I bet you they're going to like oral sex or whichever way it is. And so they do it, but they don't like it. And then they don't want to do it after they are together for a while. And then the other person feels trapped. It's like, be real from the get-go. Find another person who doesn't like oral sex. So, and that may narrow your field down, absolutely, but you're going to be a whole lot happier in the end if you don't do things to try to impress, manipulate, seduce, coerce anybody into anything, but you just trust the process and you trust the universe that if you're meant to have a partner, that the right person will come to you if you are honest and open and real. Another thing that I always tell my clients, and I made this mistake so many times, I literally cannot count. Don't have sex too soon. Couples have sex, so often, immediately, and I did it too. First date, like the guy, think he's cute, let's have sex. And of course, what ends up happening is then you really are prone to overlooking things that you shouldn't overlook. And then you are prone to trying to make it work. And then you are also prone to heartache if it doesn't work out. If the guy never calls you back or the woman doesn't answer your phone afterwards or whatever. It's like if you didn't have sex that soon, you would prevent so much heartache in the end. And I've had it both ways. I've waited and oh my God, it's so much better because then you get to see who the person really is before you risk having your heart broken or before you feel committed to take it forward if it's not right. If you haven't had sex yet, it's a lot easier to break up with somebody that you realize is not right for you. So just remember that, if you wait 2 months while you're dating somebody to make sure that you actually love them and they love you and you're in a committed monogamous relationship, if that's what you're looking for, then realize you have the rest of your life to have sex. Don't have sex too soon. And try to relax into the process. That's the whole point of see it as practice, is to let yourself relax into the process as much as you can. And I said it already, is try not to force anything. Try to just relax into the process and let it unfold and, prevent your mind from projecting too much to where it's going to end up. Stay in the present moment. Stay in this date. Stay in this conversation. Stay in this thing that you're noticing and telling the other person about, and stay in the moment of receiving the feedback and own your accountability. So all the other skills, life skills, relationship skills that you know about, practice them while you're dating. And one last thing is remember that if you are meant to be with this person as a life partner, nothing that you say or do, or they say or do, and nothing that happens will tear you apart. And if you are not meant to be with them, I don't care how much you seduce and manipulate and strategize, it will not work. And I don't know whether that's really true or not, right? I don't know if there is such a thing as meant to be, but I believe that, and I have lived that way. And anyone who has embraced that philosophy about dating, that if you're meant to be, nothing can tear you apart, that really helps you relax. That helps you make it through some very hard times, because if you're meant to be together, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to work out. Even if it feels impossible right now, it's going to work out. And if you're not meant to be together, there's nothing you can do to make it happen. So you can just relax and trust the process. and just practice your relationship skills, your honesty, your willingness to be vulnerable and open, and leave the rest up to the universe. So that's it. And I hope that's helpful for you. I'd love to get your feedback and comments always. And if you have topics that you'd like me to talk about, please let me know. Love you guys. See you next week.